Vaibhav. In today's session of Visual JForex, I will be explaining to you the use of indicator block named Get Historical Candles. This is an component of the Visual JForex setup. In yesterday's session, we had seen the use of indicator block, which was fairly similar, but in which we were looking at the data derived from only single candlestick. Now we are going to take the cluster of the candles, and that's why we will be requiring some more input variables, and we will also have to be careful while taking the output value for defining the conditions. So here you will find these indicator block listed amongst the info classification. Here it is, get historical candles. Now we head to the Visual JForex board developed by Dukascopy Bank SA. Component blocks, info, and in info it is the second most. To initialize the block, we can use any of the three start points. For today's session, we will utilize the on candle as our start point. Now coming to its input variables, we have to define these 5 input values: the candle instrument, default period, the offer side, shift value, and the candle amount, the number of candles which we are going to use for defining the cluster of these block, get historical candles. And depending on these input variables, we will have the output value. Now let us see how the system works on the chart. This is the USD JPY chart being plotted on the hourly time frame. Suppose if you want to look at the data points for the USD JPY and you want to take the couple of candles together. Now suppose for example if you want to take the 4 candles of 1 hour each, then you can look at these 4 candles price movement. What was the high, what was the lowest price, what was the start point, open price, and what is the close price. So you can look at all these data together instead of taking only one single candlestick. In yesterday's session, we had seen how to utilize the data points derived from the single candlestick. Now we are looking at the cluster, and it can be of any number of candles as per your requirement. If you want to take 10, you can take 10. If you want to use 5, you can take 5. So depending on your setup requirement, you can define the number of candlesticks which you will be taking into consideration, and then after looking at the data, you can utilize the common data points like the highest value or the lowest value or other variants, and we get these data points depending on these input variants. So first we have to see what is the instrument on which we want to work. So suppose if you want to work with the Euro USD, then you don't have to change anything. But if you want to use any other instrument, for example, we are going to use the USD JPY in today's session. So we will have to search for USD JPY amongst all these listed instruments. And once we get the USD JPY, we will define another input parameter, but first thing is finding USD and okay, we got the USD JPY. So our instrument of choice is USD JPY. Now then comes the question of the candle period, whether you want to work with the 10 seconds or whether you want to work with the 1 month time frame is going to be purely dependent on your time horizon, how you are planning to use these to set the conditions for the profitable algorithm, and depending on this you will be looking at the data points. So you have to be careful what are the candle period, appropriate candle period amounts, and then depending on that take any one particular choice. For example, let us take 15 minutes as our time period for each candle. Then comes the question of offer side. Given that we are trading with some spread in between the ask price and the bid price, we have to pay attention to this upper side as well, as there will be always minor difference in the output value depending on the offer side. And whenever you are doing the comparison, you should be taking the blocks of same offer side. Shift is the look back period, whether you want to use the cluster of candles ending with the current candle, or if you want to go back in time, you can define these using the shift value, the look back period, and depending on that you will be retrieving the data points. Suppose if you want to work with the cluster of candles closing with the current candle, then you don't have to change anything. But if you want to say go back a couple of hours, for example, if you want to go back 2 hours, and for that you will have to utilize the shift value of 8, as in 1 hour we will have 4 candlesticks of 15 minutes each, and to go back in time by 2 hours we will need the data points with the help of shift period 8 of 15 minutes each, and using that we will be able to retrieve the cluster of candles data ending 2 hours back if we are using the shift value of 8. So that was the example. So the key thing is that you look at the default period of the candle, and then you want to also look at what is the time period, what is the time horizon, and depending on that you want to retrieve the prior data and do the comparison and set certain conditions. And the candle amount, as I said, candle amount is going to be dependent on your preference only, and what is the appropriate candle cluster is never an easy question to answer. So you have to see if you are trading with a consolidation identifier, then I think you can look at the cluster of data and see if the price has been sideways or if there has been substantial momentum. So you can utilize the cluster of say 6, 7 or even 10 candles. Or if you don't really want to look at much of the data, you can even take 2 or 3 candles, and then taking together you can look at their high, low and other characteristics. So that way also it is possible to define the conditions, set the conditions. So depending on that, we will be getting the output value depending on all these 5 input parameters. But to retrieve the output value, we can't really utilize this output value directly. We have to look at another component, and we have to take that component, and then using that component we will be able to retrieve the data. So if you here click on this, nothing happens, and compared to the yesterday's session when we were taking the single get historical candle block, and with the help of that we, after defining the input parameters, we were getting this output value. Suppose for example here it is named candle 14. Now if I want to retrieve the characteristics of that candle 14, I get the options to retrieve all these data points: high price, open price, close price, etc. But for candle 13, nothing such thing is there. And the key requirement is that we have to use another component named loop viewer. For today's session, I won't really be explaining to you in details what is loop viewer. We will do the loop viewer session separately, but to retrieve the data, all you have to do is take this candle 13 and put it in the array of data. And what this block does is it looks at the multiple data points at the same time. It is actually the array, and it will have the input characteristics, and then depending on the defined factors, defined input parameters, we will have the array of data, and using that array of data we can use any particular output value, any particular data point for any given period of time. It is going to be dynamic, and we will always have different data points as output at a different point in time. and that's why we have to use this loop viewer to gather the multiple data points together. We have to keep these candle 13 as the input value, and then we have to define the output value. Now the type is variable type has become candle. For example, we name it HC, historical candle, HCS, okay, historical candles. Now we have created the fresh variable, and here you will get all the data points. So here we have high price, open price, close price, low price, volume, candle period. And these for all the cluster of the candles taken together. So the high price, open price is going to be for last 5 candles of 15 minutes each. And the closing and opening value is also be the it will also be of these 5 cluster candles. So whenever the cluster's first candle starts, we will have that as the open point, and whenever the last candle will close, we will have that as the candle close. And then, as I said, all these other variables are also derived from this same data set. So that's it from my side for today's session, and I hope you have been able to understand the logic behind the use of this get historical candles block. These are very useful when you are looking at multiple candles, and you want to retrieve the data points and define the conditions. In such circumstances, it is better to use get historical candles block rather than using only one single candle to define and set the conditions for profitable trading opportunities. So thank you all for joining in. Stay tuned and do practice on your own using this Visual JForex board. Goodbye.